Hello everyone, this is powponderonweather. In this update, we're going to be talking about a major snowstorm with blizzard warnings, dangerous wind chills, and ice. So welcome back everyone. I appreciate all my followers out there and all the new followers. I do daily updates on the weather, so if you hadn't subscribed already, all you can do is hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell to get all my daily updates. Let's break this down over the next 7 days because we got a lot going on. So here's the overall surface map for this morning. We've got some more rain inundating the Pacific Northwest, but you can see where the Arctic air is. It's to the north here. We've got 18 below zero in Calgary right now, but that's making a beeline further south, and there's the leading edge of that colder air. And now we got our first little clipper system that we're going to be talking about, and these little lines here, those are your isobars. That is the higher pressure gradient, and that's indicative of some higher winds in this region along with that snow. So with the dangerous wind chills, very cold temperatures, and snow, these brutal conditions up here, but now that same system will traverse across the upper Midwest as well as the Great Lakes, dumping some heavy snow. Then we also have got some freezing drizzle and freezing rain along the east coast here this morning. But you can see where that Arctic air is going to be making a plunge further south, and the south winds are already kind of turned around in places down here into Louisiana. So let's take a look at the overall map this morning for your winter weather advisories, and these are in place for that freezing drizzle and freezing rain that's falling along the east coast here. So places into Philly, going into New York here, as well as into Boston, portions of Portland, Maine, they're actually seeing some of that light freezing drizzle and light glaze on the roadways this morning. So definitely take extra precaution if you're leaving the area in this area to go to work this morning, but with that kind of a light thin glaze, and that's black ice typically, and that's very difficult and very dangerous because you're not really expecting it to be on the road. Let's take a look at the overall storm tracks, because they're essentially going to be basically two different tracks. We got our first little clipper system that we're going to be tracking. There's where the low pressure system was last night at 997 at 7 o'clock last night. This morning, it is over portions of the Great Lakes, and it's going to continue traversing across and dropping down a little bit, down to a 992 with that heavier snow, but the very high winds on the backside. But we have a second system that's going to be developing as well. That's going to be our second snowstorm that we're going to be talking about. That's going to be developing with some rain down here in portions of Louisiana. And this is going to be transferring to some ice here, but snow to the north. So we'll be tracking this, but this low pressure should be off the coast of New England here by the time we get into on Saturday. So let's kind of delve into the details and look at the overall hazard map for this morning. And you can actually see that red, that is blizzard warning, guys. So that's, they're dealing with those very cold temperatures, dangerous wind chills, and now we're talking snow and very high winds. So that's going to be the culprit of that blizzard warnings in portions of Dakotas. But man, more heavy rain coming back in for the Pacific Northwest. But all these winter weather advisories, that's typically indicative of about 1 to 5 inches of snowfall. But man, what's going to be prevalent with this system is the very heavy lake effect snow with the wind direction. And some of these areas could pick up a foot. Some areas could pick up 2 feet of lake effect snow with this system over the coming days. But we also have new winter weather advisories in place for portions of Wyoming. That feeds into Nebraska here, and then it picks back up again, and we have brand new winter storm watches in places for Kentucky and West Virginia, which I think this is going to be able to fill in as that system gets closer in. So let's take a look at the overall wind chills for this morning. These are actual wind chills, guys. We're talking 48 below zero. That is dangerous stuff. You can get frostbite in 10 minutes in that type of environment. But those dangerous wind chills go all the way down into Montana and start to filter into portions of South Dakota, and all these negative temperatures. That's brutal stuff, what it feels like. But that's the indicative that Arctic air mass is on the move further south. Let's take a look at the overall winds, because we're going to be having to deal with that as well. And that's why they have these blizzard warnings in place for parts of the Dakotas, because on top of the snow right now, we're getting those wind gusts of upwards to 40 to 50 miles an hour. So they're going to be dealing with all that heavier winds as these moves across the Great Lakes and the Upper Peninsula here with that first clipper system. But we also have some very high winds going to be impacting portions of Colorado again, up in the mountains and the foothills here. So definitely be on the lookout for that, because obviously this area has been really dry and they've had a lot of fires as of late as well. And so we got more high winds coming in and now maxing out at 94 miles an hour. So not as high as it was last time, about 115, but still these winds are packing a punch with some hurricane force winds gust coming in over the next day or two. So as we expand the view, let's take a look at that overall first system, that little clipper system. About 9 o'clock this morning on Wednesday, you can see it's over light snow over portions of Minnesota, getting into Wisconsin here, going across the Great Lakes, as getting into Michigan. There's the atmospheric river continuing for the Pacific Northwest, and there's your freezing drizzle that we highlighted at the beginning of the video with those winter weather advisories, and the portions of Philly and northern Jersey here. So definitely be on the lookout for that light glazing of ice on the roadways. So as we expand the view and go into early tomorrow morning in the overnight hours, we can see that first clipper system winding down, but the lake effect's going to be full in effect with those feet of snow building up right along the lakes. And we'll go over some of the totals. But we have our second system already kind of developing. You can actually see where it kind of dies down once it hits the midsection of the country where they've just been bone dry. And then once it actually taps into some of these warmer Gulf temperatures, it's able to kind of resurge again. So we have some lighter snow, kind of a dusting starting to break out into portions of Missouri. And you can already see some rain moving up with that south wind into Louisiana. So the cold air comes, but it's a quick shot of cold air. So here's the overall, some of the totals that we're looking at going forward from this particular snow event as it moves east. Yeah, those lake effect snows are going to be pretty high. This graph here, we're talking 12 to 18 inches right along the lakes there with that piling up snow. Then once it gets into Buffalo, yesterday we were thinking about 9 inches, but now we're probably thinking double that with the lake effect snow, as this really starts to get cranky and it kind of just trains over the same area for an extended period of time. So the bullseye looks to be Buffalo as well as into Watertown. Yeah, some of these areas is not out of the question. You can pick up 2 feet of snow just between now and Thursday night. So definitely be on the lookout for that. But there's your wind chills, or no, these are actually actual temperatures as we get into Thursday. So that's the indicative of that Arctic air mass plunging southward of those 20 below zero actual temperatures in the Dakotas, with single digits filtering far south as Kansas here and getting into the teens as we go into Thursday morning, because it arrives in Texas by then. But there's the south wind as it kicks. It kind of a glancing blow. It really doesn't really make it that far south before the winds kind of turn around and rebound again with those higher temperatures down here along the coast into portions of Louisiana. So as we go into our second system, and as those winds turn around, we got rain on the south side, we got the warm air aloft, we got the cold air coming from the north. So we are going to be having some of those overrunning conditions and squeeze out some light drizzle, light freezing rain, some sleet. You can see the graph here at the bottom of the screen. The blue is your snow, the orange is your sleet, and the pink is your freezing rain. And all the yellow, all the green here, that is your light rain. Your yellow is your kind of a more moderate rain. And of course, the darker blue is kind of your heavier snow that's going to be coming across. So as we get into, say, Thursday morning about 9 o'clock Central Time, yes, we could be looking at some snow breaking out into southern Missouri here, southern Illinois, getting into Tennessee, again, going into portions of Kentucky, as well as southern Indiana, as this starts to really crank up, as it pulls in some of those warmer Gulf sea surface temperatures. It's able to feed this system, go into Tennessee with some light to moderate snow filtering into that region by the time we get into Thursday afternoon. Pretty much all of Kentucky is going to be locked in with the lighter to moderate snow by then, and getting into portions of southern Ohio by then. And then as we go into kind of the 8 o'clock time frame on Thursday, going into the midnight hour, that's moving out of Kentucky, goes into southern and eastern Ohio, gets over West Virginia as well as western PA here. And with all the rain on the south side, and then as we continue to traverse across, and as this lifts northeast, it goes through DC, Delaware, goes into portions of Maryland here, and then gets into Jersey by the time we get into that 4 o'clock a.m. time frame on Friday morning, and then gets into New York City, Long Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, portions, gets into Boston with that low pressure system going to be hanging off the coast. So I showed you the graph where that track is. With the low pressure system hanging off the coast, it definitely appears southern New England is going to be kind of your higher snow threat from this particular system. Last time the snow only reached portions of Philly, and it was all southward. It never really went further north. This one's definitely different, because if we zoom in, by the time we get into that Friday morning, going into late Friday morning time frame, yeah, we could be looking at some heavy snow starting to break out into southern New England and going into Maine by then. So let's kind of break this down. Here's the latest kind of snowfall totals from the National Weather Service from this particular event as it moves towards the east. We've got the graph here at the left hand corner of the screen, and all these kind of lighter shades of blue are kind of your 1 to 3 inch snowfall totals. Your darker blues are your 4 to 6 inch totals. So you're thinking maybe about 3 inches in Pittsburgh, some little bit heavier amounts where this yellow shaded area is, but into DC, going into about 3 inches of snowfall, into Philly, probably about 3 inches of snowfall, as well as New York City. And this goes up the coast, and they have some higher snow amounts along the coast here, going into Boston, going to southern New England as the snowstorm lifts off to the northeast. Now let's zoom into the latest 3K model as well, because that's a little bit, this just finished. So as it finished, that's actually increased the snowfall totals a little bit. So we're talking maybe a dusting as it goes into Missouri, but then once it gets into Tennessee, here's the graph at the bottom of the screen, 3 to 5 inch swath into portions of Tennessee, going into Kentucky as well as West Virginia. Still, Pittsburgh's about on the borderline of that 3 inches, but southern PA gets into DC, Delaware, goes back into Jersey with more snow, and then there's your heavier snow once it gets into southern New England, into the Boston area with some higher amounts indicative of that pink shaded color of some of those 8 inch totals. So let's zoom into that area. So yeah, let's go back to Dover, about 3 inches of snowfall. This is the latest 3K NAM model, about 3 inches in Philly, Scranton about 2 inches. You get into Middletown, about 4 inches of snow, New York City, about 3 inches of snow. So it kind of gives you an idea some of where the lighter to moderate snow is going to fall. But yeah, once you get up to Providence, about 6 inches, Boston about 8. So yeah, along these areas on the coast, you pick up some higher amounts, with Philly about 3 inches down here further to the south. And as it goes up the coast here, getting into portions of Portland, Maine as well, getting back into that 7 inch rain, and then a little bit lighter amounts as it heads north, going into Bangor with that low pressure offshore. It never makes it inland, so it remains offshore, and then it continues lifting off northeast. Further to the north, going into Quebec, about 2.5 inches. Montreal, maybe an inch, right? Because the low is well to your south. So let's expand the view and take a look at what's happening going forward. So as that system moves out, I showed you the wind direction that's coming in from the south already in Louisiana. That just continues to lift further northeast. So as this moves out, you're actually going to be having a fairly quick warm up for much of the eastern 2/3 of the US, but for some parts that's actually going to be short-lived. So as it continues to push with that kind of a higher ridge going to be developing back in, that's the south wind. With the south wind, you pull in the moisture from the Gulf and brings in the heavier rain along our southeastern areas, filtering into the Ohio Valley with that rain coming up on Sunday, January 9th. Then as we make that transfer again, as we still have that cold air in place, yes, we could be looking at some icy setups in portions of Pennsylvania, going into New York as we get into that Sunday time frame, with your Monday morning commute being pretty treacherous in this area as well. But yes, behind that, it looks like we have a piece of, say, of a kind of a polar lobe that might be coming down from Canada, and with the beeline, a lot of the ensemble members have it beelined into portions of New England here, and this could be your coldest temperatures of the season. This definitely comes in fruition. It's been pretty prevalent over the last couple days with these model runs, but so yeah, it definitely appears we've got a piece of some polar type air coming in for New England. And if that does come to fruition by the time we get into that 11th and 12th time frame, this is by far your coldest temperatures of the season. We're talking low teens, 15 degrees in Philly. You're going into New York City, 14, Boston, 4 degrees. So this would be by far your coldest temperatures of the season coming up. And this would be at least a week away, 6-7 days away. But it definitely appears your coldest temperatures are going to be on the table as we get into that 11th and 12th time frame. But there's the precipitation over the next 7 days. There's the atmospheric river in the Pacific Northwest. It's dry as a bone down here in the Southwest and portions of West Texas, getting in the midsection of the country, taps into the Gulf of Mexico. Boom, it starts activating again. Maybe some rain showers in Dallas on Saturday. It's going to be on the borderline again. It sets up into Louisiana, into Mississippi, goes into Alabama. Those are a good swath of 1 to 4, some isolated spots of 6 inches. So you could see some flooding rains come back on the weekend for portions of Louisiana, getting into Mississippi. And then, so I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely hit the subscribe button if you hadn't already. And catch me in the next update where I protect you before and after the storm.